Hello, everyone. It is Jennie and Laurie of Astropath, and we're here to talk about the astrology of the month of August 2026. I can't believe we're already heading into this part of the year, but here we are, and there's a lot going on in August. We've passed some really huge things in July, and now we're looking at a solar eclipse this month, a whole bunch of planets changing sign. There's really quite a bit to talk about. And we're going to look at the calendar and then we're going to go into little bits about each of the signs. And before we go any further, please, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that and share our video, send us messages. We will respond to any message that comes through. Might take us a few days, but we will respond. So, what do you have to say about what's going on in your business, Jennie?
I just wanted to encourage everybody to take a look at my website and putting together some couple different class options coming up in the fall. So by the time this video gets released, they will be on my website. So just check those out and I'll talk more about them as they unfold. So that's it. What about you?
Awesome. Well, I've redone some of my offerings, so check my services on my
Mm.
website. I've done some work on the website there as well. And, sign up for my newsletter and sign up for Jenny's as well. I was talking to somebody yesterday, Jenny, who said she gets both your newsletter and mine. And
Mm,
she was just talking about how much she likes having both of us in her life. It was really just interesting
it's
to
nice.
hear that. So, yeah, follow us both, get consultations with one of us or both of us or whatever you need to do. But here we're going to move into August.
All right. Yeah, so I guess the first thing, we'll just talk generally about what's going on. I mean, the sun is going to be in Leo for most of August, and then it switches into Virgo on the 22nd. So that's always that kind of changing of the sun season. And again, as Lori mentioned, there are some eclipses coming up. So we have the nodal axis has just switched signs on, I think it was July 26th, and is now in the north node's in Aquarius, and the south node is in Leo. So that means that the eclipses are starting to creep into Leo and Aquarius. So that's what we're starting to see with this month. We've just come off a crazy July, right? Like there was just so much going on in the month of July. There was so many different outer planet interactions and things we've never seen the likes of before. And Jupiter's in Leo now, so that really made everything bigger. So that's what we're kind of coming off on into August. And then we have these eclipses. And then there's also this other funny thing I've noticed, which is these little gaps where nothing's happening for a few days. So I kind of think of that as like you got time to digest. There's like a thing, and then there's like, okay, what has shifted? And then a next thing comes along. And you'll see that in the calendar when we go over that. Yeah. What else?
Absolutely. I think that's what we're looking at. The nodal shift, we did do a video already about the
Mm.
nodal shift. So be sure to watch that. We're going to be talking more about that in this video because it is such a big part with the eclipse coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, watch that video as well.
Yeah. And then just think, keep in mind like what happens when the sun moves from Leo to Virgo. That's another thing to think about. It's such a difference. And I love the way the zodiac is just this wheel where each sign is sort of a response to the one before it. Leo's, big, fire, bombastic, joyful, exuberant, can be very self-centered, but also very entertaining. There's a lot of sort of drama that can come about in Leo season. And then the sun, is like, all right, I got to move into Virgo and start doing some good. It starts really focusing in on the minutia. Comes off from this big thing, especially with Leo, Jupiter in Leo, excuse me, and then drops into Virgo. So that's the tone really shifts. That's the time to get to work. That's the time to start thinking about how you might want to be helpful, what's your task list, and you sort of settle into the nuts and bolts and get to work. So it's a pretty dramatic shift from play to work.
I
Not
love
that.
it. It's one of my favorites. Leo season is everybody's at the beach. I've been going to the beach almost every day. It's kind of
I
ridiculous,
love that.
but the middle of the day, I just drive to the beach, take a nap on the beach, and come home. And it's just so fun to kind of be in the midst, even though it's just a break from my work day. I'm in the midst of everyone in their summer vacation. It's just such an awesome way to kind of absorb that sense of Leo, because Leo is, it's like everyone wants to be on vacation when the sun is in Leo, and they want to be out under the sun playing on the beach.
Hmm.
And then what happens? Partway through August, people start thinking, oh my God, I've got to get the kids ready to go back to school. And that shift from Leo to Virgo feels so much to me like going back to school. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, we have played enough. And most of us, by the time the sun moves into Virgo, we're ready. We're kind of
Yeah.
tired out from that heat and that sun and all that focus on play. It's like, oh, I just want to go home and think about getting the kids off to school, cleaning the house, getting the sand out out of the
Yeah.
yeah, and getting back to work
Hmm. Yeah. It
in
really
a
has
really
that.
positive way. I love that
Mhm.
shift. It's because it's one of the most dramatic ones in my mind. It's one
Yeah.
that everyone recognizes. There's
Yeah.
no mistake that we go back to school at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and that's exactly why too, I'll start offering classes like towards the end of
Right.
the sun being in Virgo because it's time for people are ready for some studies and to kind of reground into the mutable earth sign of Virgo. So I think
And it's
that's
true,
part of
like
it. Yeah.
I don't know if you've probably noticed this too. When the sun goes into Virgo, all of a sudden my calendar fills up as far as
Mhm.
consultations and all of a sudden work becomes so much more of a focus. People
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to do that internal, let me look at my chart and understand myself better when the sun is in Leo. You're too busy playing. You don't care about what's
Yeah.
you're not as apt to do that internal focus. When the sun moves into Virgo, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I've got to understand myself better.
Yeah. And I think just here, I want to just reiterate, Lori and I make these videos so that you can really think about what are these moving planets? What do they light up in your chart as they go into a different sign and a different house in your chart? So that's, really what we're focusing on here. We're just hoping that you can kind of have these takeaways of like, oh, that energy, where is that going to really impact me? And that's, of course, we'll talk about that in the individual impacts. And to that end, like the nodal axis video that we made, we talked about how it went from the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo to the North Node in Aquarius and the South Node in Leo. And I just thought we should just revisit that topic quickly, where the South Node moving from Virgo to Leo, because it moves backwards through the zodiac, is a chance to look at where have I released perfectionism, because that's what we're looking at with Virgo, like sort of nitpicky, overly critical, all the difficult things of Virgo. And now it moves into sort of an analysis or looking at of our egos. Where is our sense of self sort of too big or maybe even too small? And how do we find that balance? I think that's part of what that shift is about. And then the one from Pisces to Aquarius is we were having a long discussion before this video about that. But in a nutshell, the North Node in Pisces is the development of compassion, but it also can be confusion and there's a lot of delusion that goes on. But it's a North Node, so we're really working towards that compassion end of it. And then when it moves into Aquarius, it's moving into the intellectual air sign. It's about innovation and inventiveness, and that being the kind of primary direction that humanity's moving in. So, what I miss? Let me
Well,
break
I
it
don't
down.
think you missed anything. I think, just to reiterate that where the South Node moves is what we are releasing.
Mm,
And, we can look at it in our own natal charts. What do we personally need to release? And then on a collective level, yes, we've been releasing perfectionism while the South Node has been moving through Virgo. And now that shifts. And the North Node is what we're developing.
mm,
So we've been releasing perfectionism. Now we need to release something about where we hold too much ego. You always, where the South Node is, you look at uh, the least positive side of the sign.
yeah.
You
Hmm.
want to focus where the South Node is. You want to focus what's the problem with this sign, and that's what needs to be released. With the North Node, it's the development of the positive side of that sign.
Hmm.
So yeah, we've been developing while the North Node has been in Pisces, we've been developing, just like you said, compassion, all of that kind of a mystical understanding. And now it's going into Aquarius, and it's tricky. It's tricky because the positive side of Aquarius is wonderful. It's innovation, it's intellectual innovation. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's
and it has that.
also
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I stopped mid-sentence
Yeah.
and lost it.
I was just going to comment that it also has that humanitarianism focus, like with Aquarius, that there is this one of the archetypes is the humanitarian.
Yeah.
But this isn't warm, fuzzy, emotional version. This is more like the intellectual and sort of being able to use objectivity to see where imbalances are. So that's the focus pushing into Aquarius. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of it having been in Pisces, so if we've done the proper work and have opened up our heart and developed compassion, the hope is that now we can use that intellectual innovation to support what we've just learned
Mm,
instead of going off the rails that Aquarius
exactly.
can take us off.
Yeah, and it's really fun, isn't it, to spin the zodiac backwards like that?
Oh,
As I
yeah,
commented, we went from Leo to Virgo, but this is the backwards because the nodal axis goes backwards
right.
through it. So it is interesting to contemplate that. And it
Yeah.
is the development of the water, the emotion of Pisces, and not losing touch with that compassion as it moves into this more intellectual sign, which the danger of Aquarius very much is the loss of connection. It's going so far out that it becomes disconnected. But I love that you said that because that's the point, right? We're talking about a transiting node,
Right.
how these nodes transit through your own personal chart. So you can think about, where did I develop compassion? How did I do that? Now, how can I carry that forwards and develop further innovation around how I communicate, how I work with language, how I interact with other people. I mean, air is very much about these interactions on the intellectual level and the exchange of ideas.
That's
So yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
I knew it would
You want to
become
look at the
clear.
calendar? What
Yeah,
did you
let's do
say?
it. I said I knew it would become clear once we
Yeah.
started making the
It's like
video.
ding.
So all right, so we're gonna
I
let
just
me make
had a
sure.
big aha about it in my own chart too, which is super cool.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, I hear that. I want to hear more about what you're talking about. So cool. Well, this is our calendar for the month of August. It starts on a Saturday. So here's the first up there.
Yeah, so
Oh,
take a
yeah.
screenshot of it and then you'll have it for the month. This is all the important
Yeah.
stuff going on.
I just realized, Lori, why there's a blank spot at the top because somehow the letters for the week slipped underneath the graphic. So that's why
Oh,
there's a big blank. So sorry about that, everybody. This is a Sunday through Saturday calendar. But anyway,
huh.
I'm just noticing that. All right. Well, when we start the season, the sun is in Leo, and there's not a whole lot going on until we get to the last quarter moon in Taurus on the 5th there. So that's what this is. We've had the full moon was on the 29th of July in Aquarius. So now we have this last quarter in Taurus. So we're in the waning part of that moon cycle. Um, and yeah, I think, and then things start to pick up.
And then,
um,
yeah, that very week we have a few ingresses, right?
hmm Yeah. Yeah, it starts with the first one is Venus entering Libra, which means, you know, puts it at a prominent point. Like Venus entering Libra, it's its own sign. So this is really kicking off that idea of wanting some kind of balance, wanting some sort of harmony or some kind of process in your relationships or the way you deal with money. You're wanting that to be intellectual and sort of on an even keel with Venus there. And it is strong there. I mean, Venus is powerful there. So
It
that's
can be
good.
very helpful. Venus moving through Libra can be very helpful for your relationships.
Yeah. It is, and as we'll see later too, this is the beginning of Venus will retrograde in Libra, and Scorpio and Libra later in the year. But we're not there yet. This is you just want to have that in your mind, and we'll see that as we get later in the month. But so talk about that more as we get later in the month, I should say. And then we have Sun trine Saturn on the 6th. So Sun is in Leo, trining Saturn in Aries. What do you think of that, Lori? Do you have
I think
keywords
that's
for that?
just lovely. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just lovely. It's just such a supportive, it's sort of, the sun is still in Leo.
Yeah.
Go out and make this a wonderful day. Mercury exits its shadow at the same time. This looks like a great weekend to me. Just like
Yeah.
awesome.
Like we're done with Mercury's being in Cancer retrograding, and we're done. It's gone past the
Yeah,
final. It's like
yeah,
26 degrees of Cancer. So that whole deep emotional process it's over, and with the Sun in Leo and Venus now in Libra, like you're like, oh, thank goodness, like I'm done with that.
yeah. And
So it's interesting.
wherever it is that Saturn is moving through your chart, Saturn currently is in Aries.
Hmm.
With the sun trining it, it's just supporting the stabilization of that whole trine as both areas, the
Yeah.
Leo and where Aries is. There's just a real nice stabilization going on there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty helpful.
Yeah.
And then we have a nice quiet weekend, though I'm not sure what someone might be doing for their birthday, but
Uh-huh. I've got plans.
oh, nice. Lori's birthday's on the 8th.
Thank you, Jenny. Wait a minute. When's yours? Yours was last month and we didn't talk about it. Or no,
No, it's
yours is
this
the
month.
17th,
Yeah, that's a
right?
busy day. We'll get to that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a busy day. So then on August 9th, at the end of that weekend, Mercury enters Leo. So I think Mercury is now totally free of that emotional encumbrance of whatever that process was. This is a time for, I dare I say, even though it's a dark moon, there's a little bit of celebration to that. There's a little bit of joyful, okay, I've moved through something. Um, and then the next day is, Venus in Libra is making a trine to Pluto and opposes Neptune, pretty close to each other
Wow.
there. So, I mean, they're very close to each other, having just come off their own connection between Pluto and Neptune. So that's a interesting time. So
Yeah, I mean,
opposing,
Venus has
yeah,
just barely gone into Libra. It's just getting comfortable in its own skin. And then it's facing off with Pluto and Neptune.
yeah, and even though it's a trine, which people I think say, oh, it's such a great aspect. Yeah, trines are great aspects, but also they mean that there's no resistance.
Right.
So if there's something that is emerging out of the deeps that Pluto represents, it's coming right at you. You can't deny it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to flatten you, but it does mean that there's not going to be like it's helpful to be prepared for that. And maybe walk towards that. What are the deeper things that might be going on to do with your financial things or your relationship that could be affected by that?
I like how Sue Tompkins says contact is contact.
Mm-hmm.
People can get so hung up on, is it a square? Is it an opposition? Is it a trine? And yes, there are distinctions there that we need to pay
Yeah,
attention to, but contact is contact. And when Venus and Pluto are in contact, there's some intensity.
yeah, yeah. And then I was thinking, and then you got this opposition Neptune and Aries. So that to me is, maybe having to come face to face with maybe a little bit of bending of the truth that you've engaged in or maybe someone else is engaged in, but just seeing it and being like, oh, or how you deluded yourself to believe something, not that you necessarily did something deliberately wrong. That's sometimes yes, but it's just the idea that, oh, wait a minute, this is where I've been complicit, or this is where I see, that that is actually a lie that I thought was real.
And the
Maybe that.
opposition is awareness.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like you see
Yeah.
something and you can use it as something to push you in
Yeah.
another direction. That trying to Pluto is a
Mhm.
real push.
Yeah. And it doesn't, again, I
Yeah.
kind of spun it pretty negatively, but it could be a spiritual awareness too. It could be a spiritual thing that is helping you gain a view of the bigger picture, which is helping you understand how to relate better in a personal relationship. I mean, it's not, I don't want to, I never think of these things as good or bad. It's anything in the mix, and it's your life that shows what that's going to be. And you watching this video gives you the capacity to be a bit more intentional.
Yeah.
So. that's that.
Absolutely. These days, right in this week, there's just a lot, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, because then we have that Mars trine North node, which we were
Oh,
just talking
yeah.
about, like, because we're going to get more into that with the individual aspects, but just as this kind of Mars is very active. So it's very much acting on something to do with that, forward movement, the development we were talking about of innovation.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
And
yeah.
then no sooner does it do that, it enters Cancer. What does Mars think of Cancer? How does Mars respond in Cancer?
Emotionally. It can be very reactive here. I think
Yeah.
it doesn't, I don't think it particularly, I think it doesn't love the emotional part of it, but also it might like the cardinal part of it. Like there's an action,
Yeah.
so it can be pretty reactive. Like,
Protective.
yeah.
Really can kick up the protective urges in a big
hmm
way, I would think.
Yeah, and yeah, I think so too. And also we've just had Venus entering Libra, we've just had Mercury entering Leo, now Mars is entering Cancer, and all of this is happening in the dark moon week. So these are rumblings underneath the surface that are kind of paving the way
And it's not
for
just
that solar
any
eclipse.
dark
Yeah.
moon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And so just to complete that conversation on the very busy August 11th, we've got Mercury.
Mhm.
It's Mercury's turn to have a contact with Pluto and Neptune, but it's doing the opposite thing because it's in a different sign. So it's opposing Pluto, trining Neptune versus what Venus just did. But same ideas,
So it
like staring in the
sees the
face of
depth
something.
and
Yeah.
intensity and opens up the floodgates to the dream or illusion of
Yeah.
Neptune.
So it's going to be very important for
Mm.
you all to look at where do you have that transition from Cancer to Leo and, from Virgo to Libra, where these sign changes have taken place and from Gemini to Cancer where Mars is doing it. So just that's the kind of takeaway for you all is kind of see where those spots are in your chart.
Mm.
Um, and then Venus does its final kind of thing here because it always is going to hit all three outer planets because of how they're configured right now. We have Venus trine Uranus, which is very active. I mean, I always just think of Uranus as that bolt of lightning, just you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And Venus is so new in its own sign, and it's just gone through this connection with Neptune and with
Yeah,
Pluto. And now it's like zing, we are moving forward somehow.
yeah, definitely. I always think of it as an awakening. Something becomes
But
very,
then
very clear.
it's right there, right before the eclipse.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so what do you think about that solar eclipse in Leo? Do you have that hitting a personal planet?
Not
Right.
exactly. I mean, it's pretty close to different planets of mine. You know, how many degrees would you give
I
personally?
mean, my Leo sun is at 24 Leo, so I'm counting that as there's something
Yeah. Okay.
that's starting to shift in that time period. It's not, it's 4 degrees away.
Yeah.
I certainly would be like, ooh, if it was 1 or 2 degrees, wow, 4 and 5, I'm starting to go, okay, I'll take note of it and see what happens, but I'm not.
I've got Mercury and Mars pretty darn close to that
Okay.
eclipse and Pluto,
Yeah.
but who's counting?
Right.
Who's counting?
So
But
I guess,
Mars and
yeah.
Mercury are my closest. And it's interesting because this is the first eclipse that's on that trajectory of the Pluto, I mean the Aquarius and Leo
hmm
opposition there. So
Yeah.
it's starting this whole new, it yeah, watch our video about the change of the nodal axis because
Yeah.
the nodes are where the eclipses follow. And this is the first
hmm
one in Leo. So
Yeah.
it's a
And
big
yeah.
deal.
Yeah, and the node is still just barely at 29 degrees. Like it's only just crept into Aquarius. Like remember, it's moving backwards, so it's still pretty far away from the actual eclipse. But this is where it's really showing up. So it's really bringing up. So this is a south node solar eclipse. So that does imply just the need to kind of look at what's driving your energy forwards, your sun energy forwards with an eclipse. So it is looking at that. And really, this is a day where you might get a pretty clear view of what are the ego things we're talking about? What is the release of ego that South Node suggests? Like, this is a first pivot point So I would just say, pay close attention to what comes up today and think about the story of your life and like what story is this eclipse telling you? What change is coming your way, especially or mostly if you have something at close to this degree. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, you
Okay.
think of these things, these eclipses as pivot points or, you know, portals. You don't think of it the way you would think of a normal new moon. You don't want to think about it in terms of, oh, what seed am I planting? You're not planting seeds at a solar eclipse.
Mm,
You are watching carefully what's opening, what's closing. These are shifts that kind of, yeah, it's not just an immediate thing. It's a
yeah.
longer term process.
Yeah, and I dare say, just this has been on my mind lately too, that whole idea of closings. I know I've said this before, the eclipses, but rather than focusing on moving forwards, and that's where all your attention is at a new moon, you really need to focus your attention on what you need to close down,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and that really ties in beautifully with that theme of releasing ego that the South Node and Leo represents. So there's something that you need to kind of, and especially coming in the heel on the heels of all these changes in this really intense couple of days coming into that. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of things like kind of, I would say, coming at you. And the job is to look at things and how do you, your attention is on closing those things down. Now, I'm not suggesting everything gets perfectly closed down with a bow on it and you get all this closure. Like, that's not necessarily it. It's just that we are not trained in our society, in my opinion, to spend energy closing things down. And I recently had a very strong experience of this as I moved because I was had needed to close down my old house in order to get it ready for someone to rent it. And that felt very different than, selling it would have had its own flavor. But anyway, it really brought my attention to that. No, I'm closing this. As much as I wanted to be unpacking in my new place,
Right.
I needed to be closing the old place. So it's just a metaphor
That's a
for,
really great metaphor.
yeah,
When
thank
you
you.
have to go back to the old place
Yeah.
and do all kinds of stuff before you can even unpack. You've got this excitement to move forward, but you can't do it until you go back and close things down. I think that's an awesome metaphor.
Yeah,
Like,
thank you. Yeah, and it was a lot of, it wasn't just cleaning, it was bringing things up to code, it was carpentry, it was all kinds of stuff. And all I wanted to do was get home and my new home and unpack. And I was like, nope, too bad. So but if once I realized that I was closing it down, I felt better about it and had a huge bonfire on the last night. And it was a perfect ending.
that's
But
great. That's great.
yeah. So
Yeah.
thanks,
Well, I
Lori.
think we can all take something from that. Just
Mm,
having that awareness that you got to go back and do some work to close something down before you can move forward. That's something we all need to learn, for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and it's not really offered as a lesson, so until it happens. And then on the same day of that solar eclipse, you also have the Mercury sextile Uranus. I mean,
That's
that's a pretty
exciting.
active.
I
That's
like
like
that.
a yeah, I think something again, a bolt coming out of the blue, but an opportunity for you to change your mindset in some way, to take on something in a different way.
Yeah,
Something along those lines.
yeah.
And then you have the Mercury sextile Venus the next day. This is the second time they've connected in the last month. Um, and this is because of Mercury's retrograde. But it's interesting how they're kind of on par. They both just moved into yang signs. So, air and fire. And now they're connecting and they've both done these different dances with the outer planets. And then they're sort of going, okay, what did you learn? I don't know. What did you learn? There's a little bit of that exchange happening between the two of them on the 13th.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then we
Um,
come to the 15th with Mercury conjunct Jupiter,
mhm.
both pretty newly in Leo. Here we are again, we are just looking at what our ego issues are.
Yeah. And I'd like to add a little something to this too. So this is on the heels of Mercury in Cancer and Jupiter still back in Cancer. Mercury almost caught Jupiter.
Right.
And then just before it connected, 3 degrees away, it turned around and did its retrograde. So this is the culmination of something that was expected to have happened earlier, perhaps. And now it's finally happening on August 15th. This connection's finally being made and it's sort of being hanging out there just waiting for some kind of completion. So I think, to me, even though we're long past that Mercury retrograde, it's all in Leo, this kind of really does bring a new flavor to Mercury from here on out. So
And
I think
yeah,
that's
I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
conjunctions are always so important because they start a process. So
Yeah.
this is the beginning of the cycle between Mercury and Jupiter, which is really about expanding your thinking or
Hmm.
your ability to process some information or express some information. And in Leo, yeah, it's about an expansion of expressed thought.
Yeah. And
Have a
I don't know.
conversation.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I mean, I like the way that Mercury and Jupiter, I always think of Mercury as like this, sort of more the quick information, and then Jupiter helps you understand the meaning of things. It brings the meaning. So merging these things together helps you understand what your small actions are doing on the bigger level. They kind of brings meaning to your kind of quick information moving things. So an example of this might be like that you've planned for a trip, and now you get to go on the trip, and you've everything that you've laid out is now coming together, and you're in this new country, let's say, and having this great exploration, and you're fully present. Like that would be to me, this example of something like that off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah. So look where Leo is in your chart, and this is where you're going to be expressing something, some
Yeah.
new thought processes.
Yes. Nice. Okay.
Awesome. I like that.
Then what happens, Lori? What's next?
Then what happens? We've got Mars square Neptune. So on the 17th, if you went on that trip, you're probably a little confused. You can't understand the language. You don't know what to order on the menu. You're just like kind of lost and confused. Just stop at the next church and go in and say a prayer.
That, or oh gosh, you immediately made me think, great time to go to a museum and see like art,
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
moved by the art. I mean,
Yeah.
that is absolutely a Mars square Neptune. Is Mars square Neptune? It's a funny contact. Is Mars, it sort of has the
Yeah.
impact of Mars being sort of diluted. It's moving forwards, it's ready to go, and then all of a sudden, bam! It's like hits a wall of water, and it's
Yeah, and
already in
it's in
Cancer.
Cancer anyway. So it's
Yeah,
like it's already like off balance. And then it
yeah,
meets Neptune in this square and it's a little off
yeah.
center. So seriously, to get your center clear, go to a museum, look at some art, listen to some music, sit
Hmm.
down and meditate or pray or whatever it is that opens up that softer, more intangible side of you.
Yeah, it also makes me think, like, and get involved, like it's almost like making art, like being involved in some sort
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
like just getting your hands dirty, because I think that's not a day to be like, oh, I'm going to be really productive today and get all this stuff done. No, you're not. But if you dropped into more of a spiritual or an artistic process or something, it could be really open up your heart,
Well, then
I
with
mean,
Mercury trine Saturn the same
yeah.
day, write some music, write some poetry.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's really
And then
actually
Venus sextile Jupiter. This is a really lovely day if you
it
use it.
is.
If you don't try to do more than what's
Yeah.
necessary.
Well, it sort of says to me, like, define productivity. I mean, if we're talking about productivity like a checklist,
Right.
no, this is not happening. But if you're defining it in terms of like opening up an artistic portal in your soul, then great. I'm like, oh, I got to think about what I'm doing for my birthday. That's quite the
Yes,
day.
because that's your birthday. So your solar
Yes.
return, have you run your solar return chart?
Briefly, I haven't taken a deep dive
But
into it,
that'll
but
be, one of the key pieces of it will be those
yeah.
pieces on that day.
That's a good, yeah, that's, I mean, that particular day, I'm sure if the weather lets me, I'm sure I'll be on some in the woods on my mountain bike, but we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see what's
What a
allowed.
wonderful day for your birthday. I love that.
Thank you. I hope it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then we move on. So, oh, I just want to remind everyone. So now we're between eclipses. So we have the first quarter square in Scorpio on the 19th. So this is always gosh, I'm thinking about Mars being coming off that square and being in Cancer, and then you have a first quarter moon. There's a lot of water in this little section. There's a lot of like needing to be aware of, in touch with, or swimming through your emotions, or something here, or your intuition. I think there's something. It's an interesting week, and remember, it's the first quarter. square, so it is active, but it's coming off a solar eclipse. So this is an unusual week. I think this is an important week as I'm looking at this right now to really be aware, be in touch with the feeling space, find flow, look for um deeper intuition, look for those sorts of things that week. I think it could be pretty helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
for you, with that being your solar return, pay attention to all that for the whole year.
Yeah, gracious. Okay.
I've been kind of getting into solar return charts lately. They're quite interesting.
I really like, yeah, I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, agreed. So sign up for consult. I do have one soul return consultation somewhere in there. Um, the
It's an
planning one. So
interesting way to
anyway,
look at the unfolding of our lives and time.
yeah. And then on the 21st, we have Venus opposed Saturn. So Venus has moved far enough along in Libra to catch up with Saturn and Aries. I always think Venus and Saturn kind of have an affinity for each other because Venus needs structure and Saturn really brings in the stability in relationships and stability in finances. I mean, who doesn't need any of
Right.
those things?
Right.
Stability of your values, all of Venus things, stability of resources.
I mean, this kind of thing is, if you're really young, can be really difficult.
Hmm.
But it's like with everything with Saturn, the older you get, the more it works because we've worked it for so long. But yeah, Saturn, Venus opposing Saturn is a great stabilization.
Yeah. Hmm.
You can see, really pay attention on that day to what you need to stabilize your values, whether it be values in love, values in resources.
Yeah.
What do you need for stabilization? That's a great day to really explore
Yeah.
that idea.
And Venus is very strong here, and Saturn is. I'm just thinking about traditional astrology here, where Venus is in its rulership with Libra, and Saturn is actually in its fall with Aries. So Saturn does not per se have the upper hand. So I think this is, to
Right.
me, that lends more positivity to the
Mm.
connection because it really is Venus going, what do I need for more balance?
Right, right.
So
Oh, I love that you brought that up. That's really, I think that's really important. And yeah, I like that.
hmm,
Venus has the upper
yeah.
hand. I like that.
Yeah, I like it when Venus has the upper hand. Uh, and then the next day we have the thing that we're going to talk about in the individual impacts. We have the sun opposing the north node, which of course means it's conjuncting the south node. So this is the sun, its last gasp in Leo, connecting. So I do think it's at 29 degrees,
Yeah.
right there and before it enters Virgo. So there's some kind of burst of let's check that, what's going on, how are you feeling about that? And you might be good and ready for the sun to enter Virgo. And I dare say if you mess something up in the Leo season, you're too egotistical or something, that this might be like, oh, thank goodness I can make reparations because the sun moving into Virgo is going to make you aware of whatever that travesty might have been. And
Right.
also, furthermore, what to do about it, what steps to take. So I like those two together actually. And again, we're going to talk about those in the individual impacts. So
Yeah.
we'll get more into that.
Yeah, it's really showing you very clearly on that same day that the sun enters Virgo. It's showing you really clearly where your ego's been a little over the top as you've been in the sun too long.
Yeah.
And it's really clarifying the direction forward.
Yeah. And
Huh, I love that. That's great.
yeah. And I think about this too, like, let's be clear with the ego thing. Yeah, sometimes that can be arrogance. You think you're so great, blah, blah, blah. But also, it can be the opposite, where you don't think it's the reverse, it's still ego if you don't think very much of yourself. And it's the same thing. It's still egoism. And in that case, you're feeling separate and cut off from the world, usually. And that also is something where, okay, well, it's time to step more into a bit more confidence. So I just want to make that clear. It isn't just, oh, you're being arrogant. You may not resonate with that, but you might resonate with being a person who tries to make yourself small a lot. And this is a opportunity to do something different. And there's other ways that might come out too, but those are the sort of the two extremes I think of.
Mhm.
But yeah, no
Cool.
problem.
No problem. No problem. We can see it all
Let's
clearly
try to
now. Right.
And then nothing really, and then it's kind of a quiet astrologically couple of days, and then we have Mercury doing the same thing because Mercury's just about to catch the sun. So Mercury is, going to conjunct the south node in Leo, opposing the north node, and then also entering Virgo. So this is your mind is kind of catching up with the rest of it. And this may give you a little perspective into some process you've just been through.
Yeah, it's like you need a
Yeah.
little more of a reminder.
Yeah.
You've been through
And
this
then,
process, you've
yeah.
got this clarity, and you need a reminder.
Yeah, and then Mercury loves being in Virgo. It's its own sign. So Mercury's like, okay, cool. I can really get some stuff done here. Let's get some data analyzed. Let's look at the to-do list, who needs help, that sort of thing. When
Right.
once Mercury enters Virgo, your mind really kind of gets onto that page.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, it conjuncts the sun. So people have different opinions. My version is that that's the start of the new Mercury cycle. The seed point of Mercury conjuncts the sun, and then later on you'll see it do its whole retrograde and so on and so forth, and repeat the cycle. So this is a seed point for that.
Mhm.
So yeah, okay,
And then we have another eclipse, a lunar eclipse. And this one has popped back into Pisces. Right.
yeah.
So,
So yeah.
yeah. Yeah. What's the difference, Jenny, between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse?
Right. So now we have, the shadow of the earth being cast on the moon. So the moon takes on that orange hue. And this is really I think, the moon represents our emotions, our reigning emotional needs. And so this is a shadow being cast on that. So it might be an opportunity to look at how's that development of compassion going. Because that's really what that Pisces, the North Node in Pisces was. It's a check-in about you've done this thing where the sun opposed the North Node and Mercury did, and now it's a little bit of like all right, how it's a lunar eclipse on the North Node, so you're getting to see like how has your progress been? How are your emotions lining up with this, whether it's compassion or mysticism or the positive traits of Pisces. Maybe you've had a big grief moment, you've been able to just, really sluice out the channels, this is an opportunity to see like how you're doing with that. It's like a little bit of a benchmark.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, yeah.
It's
And also,
interesting. This whole month,
yeah,
things
go ahead.
sort of seem like they're going back and forth. It's
Yep.
like moving forward, looking back, paying attention to where you've been in order to move forward.
Yes. Yeah. And and that day of the eclipse, I mean, it's a fairly stressful day with that double square to Uranus. I mean, having both Sun and Mercury, they're like, whoa, I mean, that's intense. Squares and I think are the most difficult aspects. They bring up a lot of friction and so there's a crossroads with a square.
Right.
And here it's just, that's that's intense, like being kind of forced into waking up about something that maybe you didn't really feel like you wanted to. There's a little bit of a
Yeah.
push going on here.
Yeah, I'd say, in thinking about it ahead of time, make sure you've got some way to work with it.
Mm,
Set up some. The thing that comes to my
yeah.
mind is find people that you can intellectually grapple with around big topics that
Mm,
neither one of you is going to take it so personally that you're going to stomp out the door, but that you can just get into that space of grappling with somebody. That's how I would think about using that
mm.
ahead of time.
And you know what I do like about it is so it's the first quarter square, right? Because those planets have now moved into Virgo, so they're out ahead of Uranus. So it's like the similar to a first quarter moon, right?
Yeah,
Or a waxing half moon. So there's a lot of energy to it, and it's being able to make something tangible out of some idea that you've had, and it's not going to necessarily be easy. And hence I love the idea of like kind of grappling it out with someone else because it's that's going to help you understand how that idea should take form
right.
now.
That's
Yeah,
exactly. I love that
yeah,
you said that because it's not just about the grappling. It's about the
yeah,
grappling to clarify your thinking to
yeah,
move forward.
yeah. So,
It's great.
ooh, and then one other thing I don't want to add here is you'll notice the eclipse is at 4 degrees of Pisces. Now, 4 degrees is the degree that all the outer planets were at in that midweek in July when they
Last
all
month.
interacted with each other and Jupiter. You had Jupiter in Leo, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, and Pluto in
All at
Aquarius,
four
all at four
degrees.
degrees. So now this is Pisces, so it's coming into that square with Uranus. It doesn't have a traditional aspect with those other outer planets that's seen, but I can't help but think there's something really important about that. That 4 degree point just kind of lighting up, especially if any of you have things at 4 degrees.
Right.
So, and somebody I know who was watching our videos has a whole bunch of stuff at 4 degrees. So this is just a time to kind of, recognize this is again, a reiteration of something. It's a continuation of some other process that began before. And on
Right.
the world stage, I think we'll see that again because we're at a lunar eclipse pivot point.
Yeah.
So
That's
watch out for that one.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have nothing until the 31st. And this is where Venus enters the shadow, meaning it's about
Ooh.
22 degrees of Libra. That means that's what it's going to come all the way back to in its retrograde down the road. I think it's in November that it's going to come back to that. So this is just the first kind of like from here on out, anything Venus contacts in your own chart, so 22 degrees and beyond into early Scorpio, you're going to get a repeat. So this could again be to do something with your values, something to do with important relationships, something to do with money, all the Venus topics, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Venus retrograde is so fascinating to me. I can't wait till we get closer to it and can start talking about it.
I know. I want to make a video about that one for
Yeah,
sure,
we will. We will. And then we've got what? Jupiter trining Saturn.
Yeah,
So that puts our two social planets in a free-flowing trine aspect to each other, stabilization of our beliefs, you know, our reward systems, however you want to think about Jupiter, but there's a stabilization there. That's a
yeah.
really nice aspect, I think.
Yeah, and both in fire signs and
Yeah.
might be it's interesting because a lot of our conversation for the individuals will be around Aquarius. These two started that cycle in Aquarius in 2020. So Jupiter
Oh,
Saturn met
well, that's right.
2020 at zero Aquarius. And this is the kind of opening trine. They've already had a sextile, they've already had a square together, and now they're moving into the trine aspect. So
Oh,
this
that's an
is,
interesting thing to explore in your own chart if
mhm.
understand how that works. That would be interesting to look
Yeah, and yeah, and there's other geeky things that I'll stop talking about, but
at.
but I'll just say the last thing is that, and then Pluto has repeated that path. Pluto came into Aquarius and has been hovering around those early degrees. So, um, yeah, and I guess I just wanted to go back to the Venus retrograde because I got the dates up. It's going to retrograde at 8 Scorpio on October 3rd, and then it stations direct November 13th on that 22 degrees of Libra.
Okay,
That was
repeat
my
that
shadow.
again. It
Yeah, so
stations retrograde on
on
what date?
October 3rd.
October
Um,
3rd at 8 degrees Scorpio.
yeah, and then it's going to stay retrograde until it stations direct November 13th at 22 Libra, which is inadvertently the same day that Mercury will also be stationing direct from its next retrograde. So
Oh, so
we'll
they're going
be,
to be retrograde at the same time again.
yeah, in Scorpio. So
That'll be interesting. I
yeah,
can
so we'll
hardly
be talking
wait.
more about that.
Oh, and that's in November. That's right in the middle of election stuff.
Oh, you got it. That's the week after election
Ooh,
season.
that's going to
So
be, yeah, well, no surprise. Okay. Are we ready to
okay.
move on?
Yes, okay. I'm going to, yeah. Let's kick this off with surprise, surprise, Aries rising. All right, so let's see. In making this video, we've been talking about, first of all, the sun, which kind of matches the Van Gogh in the background. So, but the sun is making this transition from Leo to Virgo. And we've talked about that a fair amount, where, Leo is this bombastic, joyful sign, and Virgo is so much about like getting back to work and getting her refocused on the kind of nuts and bolts of life, so that's kind of the first takeaway from this is just really, paying attention to that transition that's happening on August 22nd. But around that same time, right before the sun goes into Virgo, it is going to make an opposition to the North Node in Aquarius, which is what we have over here. And so you have to kind of think about this in two ways. You've got to start with the fact that the sun is conjuncting the south node. So, as we've talked about a fair amount, this is a really important opportunity to deal with some ego issues. Now, with Aries rising, those issues may have to do with your creative process. It may have to do with, I don't know, maybe something that you're really, bent on with your children, and it's not actually the right thing, or it's more about what more about you than your actual children. It also could be another way this could manifest, because the fifth house is about pleasure, and sometimes that's about addictions like gambling. So this could also be a time when you're really like, I'm doing my thing, and it's time to pause and kind of question, what are you doing around these topics, children, creative pursuits, and just sort of look at, where's your ego in this? Are you really being self-centered, perhaps a bit self-absorbed, or are you, perhaps setting aside what you really think is right in favor of something else? I mean, that's sort of that reverse ego idea. So these are the questions you want to think about. And then the opposition to Aquarius is really this reach to out to your community. You've got Aquarius in your 11th house. You've already had a lot of activity here because Pluto has moved into this 11th house. This is a time to really get clear about kind of, who are you doing this all for? What's the bigger story here? How does the community around you support you with whatever you're doing with these sort of creative things and kids and all those topics? So I think that's really what we're looking for, is how can you further develop in this moment of time those Aquarian traits in your 11th house, where you really are able to be more connected with people through ideas and communication and language and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I guess I'd love to hear what your inputs are, but that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. I think, anyone with Aries rising, with the sun having been for, while it's been in Leo, going through your fifth house, summer must be even better for Aries rising people than for anybody else, because the sun is going through that fifth house of fun, and yet this is a time as the nodes move backwards and the south node does move into that house. Yeah, you are looking at, where are you too attached to fun
Mm.
or pleasure?
Yeah.
Where are your expectations, need to be slowed down a little in exchange for the support of the group, the connection with the group.
Hmm.
There's,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
So it is funny to think about the sun going through the fifth house in Leo, and then it goes into the sixth house. Your day-to-day routines have to get serious here when the sun moves into Virgo. I mean, we all have to get serious when the sun moves
Yeah.
into Virgo. We all just naturally do that. The days are getting shorter and the kids are off to
Yeah.
school, or you're starting to think about what you want to study. But it really settles into your day-to-day routines, about stabilizing that
Mm.
area. And, you know, you've also learned a lot about, probably in the last year and a half, you've been learning a lot about how to let go of your perfectionism in
Mm.
that area of your day-to-day routines.
Yeah. Yeah. So this might be an interesting time. When you were talking, Laura, I was thinking about, I have someone in mind, who is Aries rising, and just that, oh, school's starting, that kind of childlike fifth house, kind of like, oh, and that maybe you've turned over a new chapter recently in embracing those routines, perhaps, and maybe importing a bit more Leo into the sixth house, and sort of enjoying it more, as perhaps tied in with whatever that process is. So
Yeah,
I'm very
as you've let go
interested
of
in
your
that.
judgments of it.
Yeah, exactly. You
That,
got
that's
it.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy. Virgo. Yeah, Virgo's awesome. Awesome energy.
Yeah,
I love Virgo. Bring on the
yeah,
sun in Virgo. I
yeah.
love
I
it.
was like, there's a
Like,
reason for that.
when the sun is going through Leo, it's just too much. It's too much
Yeah,
fun, too much pleasure. It's like, oh. Bring on the calm of Virgo.
Yeah. Well, ready to move on?
Ready to move on.
Okay, let's go to Taurus rising.
Okay, so for those of you with Taurus rising, as with all of us, you've been in the middle of Leo season. Here we're talking about the whole month of August here. So what we want to think about is that on the 22nd, the sun moves into Virgo. So before that, the early part of the month, please listen to the first part of this video where we really go into all the details of what's happening. But on a, simple topic here for these videos, we're talking about the movement of the sun from Leo to Virgo and its connection to the nodal axis and the North Node backing into Aquarius. I think I just like talked around in a circle. But at any rate, the sun has been in Leo in your fourth house. There's been a lot of focus on warmth and generosity around your family, around home. Maybe, maybe Leo season every year for you is about welcoming people into your home and really, shining your brightest light in that area with your family. And now, here on the 22nd, when the sun enters Virgo, that area has to slow down. You've got to slow that down as the days are getting shorter and you need to get more serious. For you, when the sun moves into Virgo, there's just a lot of energy moves into how you um, how you do your creative processes, how you show up with love and creativity in the world. And with Virgo here, over the past year and a half, you've been learning a lot about letting go of certain levels of perfectionism in how you give of yourself. So, this suggests to me that you've learned a lot about not getting caught up in perfectionism, and it really is going to allow you to accomplish more and get more done and enjoy your creative processes or your children, to just enjoy that space more as the sun moves into Leo. Now, the other thing that we want to look at is that the sun, that opposition from the sun to the North Node, which means that it's not only opposing the North Node, it is conjunct the South Node. That is really showing us, it's really kind of clarifying the whole process on a personal level. It's clarifying what it is you're going to be being asked for the next year and a half of the South Node going through Leo. This point is really going to clarify what the Leo problem is in your fourth house. I talked about inviting people over, having, big expressive warmth in your fourth house around your family. Well, now you are getting an opportunity to look at how your ego might be a little too attached to how
Mm-hmm.
bright and shiny you are as the person in the family that people gather around for warmth.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking at that and seeing how you can continue bringing expression and warmth to your home and family without getting your ego all tied up in it. And then, bringing that energy to the support of what's happening in your outer world,
Mm-hmm.
allowing that understanding to clarify a push of who you are in the outer world. Would you
Mm-hmm.
add something to that? Because I'm sort of muddled.
Well, I mean, the 10th house is the most public house. An easy way to understand it is, what do you do for work? Because that's typically what you show up as, right? I mean, not always. It is your social reputation. But the idea here is that all of this, the other two things are happening down and deep in your personality. They're things you're trying to work out for yourself. And this is how you must push out into that outer world and kind of seize the bull by the horns and recognize that all this work you're doing is for the betterment, is for your social contribution, which is the 10th house to me. So I love what you said about the idea of getting too kind of wrapped up in like, oh, I'm family and it's so great and I'm so comfortable and warm and lovely here, but then the sun moving into Virgo is like, and now it's time to get to work on those creative projects. It's time to shut the door on the family, but not the family really, but your identification with the family, and start doing that Virgo work. And the other thing you said, Lori, about the release of perfectionism, like whatever the hang up is, whatever the hold up is, you can kind of blast through that now because you've done the work. So you sort of blast through that, and then recognize that the whole thing is kind of pointed up a little bit like a rocket ship towards your social contribution and reputation. So yeah, I think you got into everything, and that's just the short version.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
so be sure you listen to the first part of this video and the video that we made about the shift of the nodal axis.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Good idea. All right, let's carry on here to
carry on.
little, little Gemini rising. So those of you with Gemini rising, what we're looking at is first of all, you can see the sun down here making its transition from Leo to Virgo, which happens on August 22nd. So the sun in Leo for most of August is this time of really joyful communication. I mean, in a nutshell, whether that means you're cruising around your local neighborhood and you're really just enjoying things about connecting on the local level, or perhaps you're in a band and you're singing and expressing yourself, or maybe you've just done a lot of writing. But in any case, this is a very joyful place for a Gemini rising person whose whole path is around expressing themselves and communicating. So this is a really nice, every year when the sun's in Leo, that's great. And then the sun is making its transition to the fourth house, where it's going to be time to start, buckling down and being very clear about where your roots need to be set, and what is the things you need to do in your home life to really establish that sense of grounding, and you're returning to your task lists and so on. But part of this process is that the sun is going to be conjuncting the south node in Leo right before it goes into Virgo, which also means it's going to have this great opposition with the north node. The sun conjunct the south node means that you're really having to look at some of those, ego issues that might have to do with your voice. Maybe you tend to be someone who thinks you're always right, or, or really has a, likes to put yourself in center stage in some way. So it's time to kind of reckon with that and look at what that's like, or reckon with the way that, on the other hand, that you're not really using your voice in a way that is genuine and authentic, because Leo does have to do with that as well. So that's where the kind of the conjunction with the South Node. Now, bear in mind that in the last 19 months or so, or something, whatever, a couple of years, I'll just say, the South Node has been in Virgo, forcing you to look at what are some issues of perfectionism, or I think of
Judgment.
just overly detailed stuff at home. Like, are you fastidiously clean and you spend a lot of energy cleaning? This is a wonderful time to let that go and be like, oh, I've already done that. I don't need to do that anymore. I need the right amount of cleanliness to have my workspace set, in this example, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So there's a real release of perfectionism that hopefully has gone on in your fourth house. You face that. So all of that kind of that deep inner process is allowing you to really lean into this North Node in Aquarius. Now, the North Node in Aquarius is the development of something. In your case, it's the development of your world perspective. Aquarius brings in a real innovative point of view. It brings in humanitarianism. It brings the ability to be objective about the way you want to look at the world. Not always. Aquarius is a little funny sign, but it is an air sign. So that kind of brings in that cerebral kind of viewing the world. So all of this to say that that's the overall direction that you want to be moving in. Like, you're recovering through these ego issues in order to step into this place where you just have a bigger, broader, more open point of view in general about the world. So that's sort of what it looks like. What do you have to say, Lori? What do you
I
want to add?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking about, you know, the work ahead
Hmm.
of, right, for the past year and a half or so, you've been releasing your perfectionism or your judgments around your family. This is
Mm,
how I'm thinking about it is
yeah.
you've really had to work hard to release your judgments around family members, about the house you live in, whatever it is. You've had to release a lot of that. And at this point, what is ahead is a understanding of how your ego is attached to your voice. And as you are, these two are, it's like the shifting sands here going in different directions because you've kind of, the sun going through here, it's like really shining this bright light on your voice, which you ultimately are going to have to be working on to reduce your ego attachment to. And then with the sun going into Virgo, it's like, okay, now I've kind of cleaned up my judgment around my family, but now I can move into this area with more clarity.
Mm,
I've let go of the judgment, but now I have to tidy it up.
yeah.
It's interesting how these are like shifting places because the nodes go backwards, of course. And with the sun connecting to them, it's just such a juxtaposition thing that gets set up. So we've done all this work
Hmm.
and now we get to see how well we are handling it. What's going on with our home now? What are we going to set in place for a detailed setup without it being full of judgment and perfectionism?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then as we are developing an understanding of how we're overly attached to the ego of our voice, we can expand our understanding and acceptance, and we can change our minds.
Yeah.
There's something with that North Node in Aquarius in the ninth house. I think there's something in that about, oh, I can change my mind
Mm,
because you're going to be seeing a new perspective there. You
yeah.
know, Aquarius is an interesting sign. It's, traditionally ruled by Saturn. There's a serious edge to it. And there's a way that it can get really stuck in its way. But the North Node is like, you've got to develop this innovation that's different from where it's been.
Right.
Hmm.
And I guess I just keep coming. So then, with the story you're kind of spinning here with, which is great, Virgo also represents service. And with this one, it's almost like making service a core value down in your fourth house, a core value. And that's what the thing is that's allowing you in the specific unit of time where right between eclipses, it's a pivot point. So it's a specific period of time when you can move your mind in a new way. And in this one with Gemini rising, which has a very malleable mind anyway, as a Gemini rising, you're able to kind of put this new idea into me, service, the idea of helping others is you know, about the highest you can go at this point in our current reality. So
Boy, that's such a clear story. And yeah,
yeah, same.
somebody's life I'm thinking
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Well, that's great.
that's
You
that's
ready to move on?
amazing. Yes, let's move on.
Yeah, that was good to kind of play around with that a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move to Cancer rising.
Okay, so for those of you with Cancer rising, we're talking about August 2026. And of course, August, the sun's in Leo. It's shining bright. It is the center of the summer. It's all about you want to go to the beach, right? So for you with Cancer rising, Leo is held in your second house. When the sun is moving through your second house, you're really aware of your values, of how you feel in your body, of how you are expressing yourself with your finances, with your resources. You might want to go out and buy a new car or whatever. But that's where we start the season is with a focus on your values, your money, your resources, not your, yeah,
Mm.
your values, your money, your resources. So on the 22nd of the month, that Leo sun is going to move into your third house, into Virgo. You know, this shift from Leo to Virgo, I hope you listen to the first part of the video because we talk a lot about all of this stuff. You want to listen to that. But for you, it's really moving the sun and the seriousness into how you use your voice. How can you be of service with your voice now that you've pumped up your values with a lot of warmth? Now you want to get really serious about using your voice for the sake of service. Let's put it that way. Now, the thing, that we're really talking about also is this shift that's happening where the sun is opposing the north node. And that means that the sun is conjunct the south node. So because the nodal axis moves backwards from the direction the planets move, we're really trading places. The south node has just moved into Leo, and the sun is just moving into Virgo. So when they do that little switch, you want to think about for the past year and a half, with the south node has been moving through Virgo, you've learned a lot about your high expectations of how you use your voice, your high, maybe your judgment of how you approach your relationships with your neighbors or your siblings or just how you talk to people. You've really had to encounter your own high expectations there. So that is now pushing backwards into your second house, where you're being asked to take that information and think about where you're a little overly ego focused in terms of your values or your money or your resources. That understanding is really for the purpose of clarifying what the opposition is. There's a real clarity as you're going through this process on how to set boundaries, how to
Mm.
use what you've learned in your voice and your development of understanding of where your ego is overly attached to set clear boundaries around other people's issues
Mm.
with a lot of objectivity. There's a real push toward developing objectivity from what you're learning about your own ego and your own expectations.
Mm. Hmm.
What do you have to say?
Well, I think it's first of all, I'm thinking about well, I guess I'll respond to the North Node thing too, like in the eighth house. I was thinking it's time to be innovative in how you deal with other people,
Yeah.
and whether that's I mean, it doesn't really matter who it is. It could be your partner, it could be family members, it could be clients, I mean, that you're innovating and doing something new and kind of I don't know, almost developing a greater vision for how to do that in a way that has objectivity, but does not lose sight of that compassion that you've busily developed with the North Node being in Pisces. So there's something about, I mean, I think that's a key phrase for me. So that might look like, depending, where this is landing for you. I mean, for me, because this is mine, I'm thinking family, I'm thinking clients. It's like, okay, well, part of this question is how do you want to do that? Are there rituals that you need to pull in
Yeah.
to help support you do this? Do you have a sense of place? Like, I think, where are you doing this? I think all of those things are going to play into how can you manage this? And you have a lot of resources. I mean, the second and the eighth house are about resources in a nutshell. So there's a lot of resources. So this is sort of digging into what resources you have to offer that. to work with that, to be more innovative in how you work with people. And it does not mean being not compassionate, and it doesn't mean disassociating, but it does mean having a bit more spaciousness around how you deal with other people's intense issues. Because space is something that's really useful. If you're feeling all, you take up space, whether that's a breath or whether that's a literal walking outside for a few minutes, it can really help you. So I think those are some of the topics. What can help give you a better sense of spaciousness dealing with other people's stuff? And the South Node stuff is about seeing yourself as you are, like trying to really look at like who you are. What's that Leo South Node telling you about who you are? Like, where is your ego, just as you've said, Lori, gone too big or just gone astray? Because I think that that's where the confusion sets in. But when you lean into the fact that you've really released some of the perfectionism in the way you communicate, that's how it kind of plays into the story. Like, so go ahead and say what you need is also part of the story, I think, with the whole boundary setting idea.
Right.
So I don't know. That's some of the stuff that comes up for
Yeah,
me.
I love thinking about that. All the work you've done
Mm,
on with the South Node moving through the third house, all the work you've done on releasing your expectations that your words have to be exact. And
right.
now when the sun moves in there, it's like I've I've calmed down my high expectations,
Yeah.
and now my voice can truly come through with more of just being of service and not
Yeah.
thinking about, oh, did I say it right?
Yeah, and for me, I have a big writing practice. So how does writing unfold? And, I mostly write about regular daily sort of astrology. I'd like to do more things. So how can I, for me, that's what the question brings in. How can I really settle into that sun moving into Virgo? And I mentioned wanting to teach some classes, and that's, anyway, all those things come together. Exactly what you just said, Lori, like just getting over the who care, like it doesn't have to be perfect, like
Right,
just getting it out there, having the conversation, saying the things you need to say. And that is back to how you innovate around working with other people's difficult stuff, right? So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think, part of that Virgo lesson that we've learned is we don't have to work as hard as we think we do.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because when you think you have to be perfect about something, with Virgo, you think you have to freaking push on it all day long.
right. And
And part
Virgo's,
of letting go of
yeah.
the perfectionism is you can take a breath.
hmm And it's efficient. Virgo wants to be efficient. So let it
Right,
be efficient.
right.
Let it
Yeah,
be efficient. Don't get, pull in the deeper layers that, and I definitely resonate with that. Like just let it wants to be efficient. So let it.
yeah.
So,
I
okay.
think that's a lot of this month is really pushing on this idea of how these two switch places, how the nodes
Yeah.
go into the South Node goes into Leo just as the sun leaves Leo and goes into Virgo to
Yeah.
highlight the work that the nodes have done, the South
Yeah.
Node.
And you start realizing why it's so important, like the early degrees and the late degrees of every sign is so important because they really mark these transitions,
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right, well, let's
Awesome.
go on to Leo rising. Okay, so if you have Leo rising, what we're looking at here is the sun is in your first house for the first part of August. And then on August 23rd, it makes the transition into Virgo. So for the first part of, August, you are just you're just walking around with a big fire around you, like you are visible. And this time of year, the sun is really shining a light on your Leo-ness, which might be leadership capacity. It might be a performance that, it might be, you just might be very magnetic. And you've got Jupiter here too. So there's a lot of ways that you are being asked to get comfortable with the Leo rising, depending on the rest of your chart. That might be easy or that might be real tough. So that's what the kind of the first part of this is. And then the sun will transition on the 22nd into Virgo and start really bringing your focus to your second house, which is, your money, your resources, your values, and just really being busy and getting to work in relation to those topics. So it might be time to come off that summer break if you've had one and really get clear about what your financial status needs it looks like and what it might need to be going forward. If you run your own business, you might have lost some income, so that sort of thing. That's where the focus is. Now, before any of that can happen, though, right before the sun moves into Virgo, it connects with the south node in Leo and opposes the north node in Aquarius. So when it connects with the south node, it actually might be a really helpful time as a Leo rising because you're going to get an opportunity to really see, or feel into some kind of ego issue, and really look at how do you feel about being a Leo rising person? Do you like walking in the room and being the center of attention? Do you hate that and prefer it wasn't that way? Those are kind of the questions that you want to look at because all of those things pertain to your ego. And it's time to sort of shed that self-consciousness or that arrogance, whatever the thing is. That's what the South Node is asking you to do is see it and release it. Um, and then it's going to move into Virgo, as I've already mentioned. And that's sort of also highlighting or summarizing a longer process you've been in that has to do with the South Node being in Virgo and you being asked to release ideas of perfectionism or really high expectations around your money, your resources, and your sense of self. So you've already been through that process. So hopefully that is loaning itself to being able to more easily see what that ego issue is. You can let it go because all of that is really bringing you back over to this north node in the seventh house. All of that whole process is really asking you, how can you be more innovative, spacious, maybe even humanitarian in your partnerships? How can you really light up the positive traits of Aquarius in your seventh house? So it just brings to mind for me, like it'd be really easy to be too dissociated from your relationships with Aquarius in the seventh. This might be a time of just kind of finding a better balance, of allowing spaciousness, allowing freedom, but not losing that compassion that you've so worked so hard to develop while the North Node is in Pisces. So I think there's something that's the keynote is what's going on in that seventh house. And what is a process is going to unfold over the next year and a half about how you innovate through your partnerships.
Mm. That's
Mhm.
fascinating. Just, I love how that the node and the sun are crossing there. Yeah, everything. I mean, I don't think I have much to add to what you've said. But just thinking about it, the someone with Leo rising, just like you said, they show up in the room and they're the center of attention, whether they want to be or not. They've got that Leo right on the surface. And at this point, for the bulk of the month, it's like, yeah, party time, party time. And then on the 22nd, the sun moves into Virgo and it's time to get serious about right, the resources, whatever that means to you particularly. And thinking about how you have worked over the last year and a half to kind of, yeah, release that perfection and release your expectations of what your income is. Maybe you've just had such a focus
Mhm.
on that, and you've really had to learn over the last year and a half to let that go. And now you need to look at the ego and how it needs to relate in relationship
Mm.
to how much you've developed compassion toward other people's stuff. And now you have to bring that compassion into a real one-on-one relationship that isn't going to
Yeah.
necessarily follow the books.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't Well, I was thinking too, Lori, there's another piece here which I didn't talk about. I often talk about the second house or as self-worth, right? And I didn't get into that this time, but it does kind of make sense with this one that we're already looking at Leo issues in the first house, and then we're moving to the second house. So it's something about seeing yourself clearly, really what you have to offer, what your resources are, without beating yourself down, but without being stuck in the ego Leo place of I'm so great. Like, right? There's a realistic, like let's get realistic about who you are, what you have to offer, what your resources, I mean, you could be a philanthropist with this and being clear about your self-worth and how you want to dole out your massive amount of money, or you could be someone with no money at all. That doesn't really matter. It's really more that question of like what's the inner work around not being, because I could see it being a real back and forth with this, where you'd be feeling really low and insecure with Virgo in the second house if you're having a tough time with it, and being like, oh, I'm a Leo, great, in the rising sign. So anyway, I just kind of, that became clear to me that this is an interesting process for this person. So
Well, it's such an interesting process. People with Leo rising and then Aquarius on the descendant. It's like, all that bombastic, bright, shining warmth on the personality. And then the relationship, there's an objectivity that you bring to relationship that you don't bring to yourself.
right, there's a coolness.
Yeah, there's a coolness around relationship
Yeah.
and a huge warmth around the self, which is it's just interesting. You've got so much
Yeah.
warmth in yourself that you have to have the intellectual coolness in the relationship. And that ultimately you're developing that ability to be intellectually innovative and curious and a lot of interesting stuff in relationship at the same time as you need to be releasing the ego attachment.
Yeah.
It's really about balancing those two. And
Yeah.
this particular moment in August is really shines a light on that.
Yeah.
The process itself is going to take a year and a half
Yeah.
of the
And
nodes
yeah.
going through there. And make sure you listen to the video about the nodes
Right.
changing sign. We talk about the same thing, only from a different perspective. But this is really this point in August where we really can see that clearly, I
Yeah.
think, if we're paying
Okay.
attention.
Great. Let's move along here to Virgo rising.
Okay.
Okay.
Virgo rising. I don't know what to say about this one, but we're talking about August 2026. The sun, for the bulk of the month, the sun is in Leo. For you with Virgo rising, that Leo is stuck there in the 12th house. Where does Leo shine? It shines in a place where the sun doesn't shine, right? It's like behind the scenes. The 12th house is an interesting house. So, Hmm. The sun in going through Leo, there's a lot of warmth and generosity tucked away behind the scenes. Hmm.
Hmm.
I don't even know how to think about that. Must be too close to home. But I do know that on the 22nd, when the sun moves into Virgo, things get serious. Things get serious and settle down. And it can be quite a relief.
Mm,
I experience the sun moving into Virgo as such a relief, even though I
mm,
love the sun in Leo. But
mm.
it's a relief. And, that
Yeah.
may be in large part because it's going through the 12th house and it's just shining so much heat and warmth in an area that usually is hidden from view.
Mm.
Right?
Hmm.
And so there's that relief on the 22nd when the sun moves into Virgo. Now, what we've really chosen to kind of focus on with this month is that shifting pattern of the fact that the nodes have just recently changed signs. So as the sun is moving into Virgo, right before it moves into Virgo, it is opposing the north node, conjunct the south node. So, this is really clarifying this whole direction that we're just kind of stepping on this path. Make sure you watch the video that we did about the shift of the nodal axis, because what we're talking about here is really a period of time where if we're paying attention, we can really get some clarity on what we're just stepping into. So over the past year and a half, there's been the South Node has been moving through Virgo, and you have potentially, if you've been doing your work, you've learned a lot about how to release your own high expectations of yourself, your own perfectionism. Oh, maybe that's why I go to the beach so much more. I don't expect myself to work 24 hours a day. It's kind of
Good.
interesting. Think
That's
about
good.
that. It's like you've been able to release some of those high expectations of yourself
Mm.
And now what's happening as that shift occurs is you need to be looking at some of your ego attachment to those hidden sides of yourself. I don't quite know how to think about that, but I'm thinking about it, right? So the development of looking at your own, maybe it's a spiritual ego, egotistical spirituality, or uh, ego
Mm.
attachment to these old stories that run your
Mm.
circuits.
Yeah.
Um, that's probably what it is. So over the next year and a half, you're going to be really looking at releasing that hidden ego. It's a hidden ego.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, and all of that is in service of finding a innovative and objective way of dealing with your day-to-day life. You're
Mm.
creating a lifestyle that reflects what you've learned and what you are learning and cannot come into view without releasing some of that hidden ego.
Mm. Yeah.
And a lot of this has come out of a lot of compassion that you've developed through relationship over the last year and a half, too.
Hmm. Yeah. That's helpful. Yeah.
It is helpful.
I think for me, this one is a way to kind of articulate this is to me speaks of sort of like the spiritual process or an awakening to a spirituality. And I'll say that meaning like just not being able to see that you're part of something greater, perhaps like feeling, because I think the 12th house can be also quite lonely in a way of like just you and your things. And I think there's something about getting through the South Node, they're seeing the bigger picture of the 12th house, the collective consciousness, and then the sixth house is like, okay, and what do you do about that on a daily basis? The 12th house is like, I don't know, there's all this big stuff happening, maybe some awakenings around subconscious processes, like having to spend some time on your own, coming to terms with why one might feel lonely, even if surrounded by people, like some of those harder to deal with things. Like I can see why Leo season can be a little tough, but then just the North Node is sort of saying, okay, well, how do you bring that into a daily practice? How do you contend with those large behind the scenes issues in a daily practice? And then the Virgo stuff is like, I mean, the first house is also your life direction. It's also kind of the direction the whole ship of the chart is pointed in, so that's like making adjustments to, what direction is that, like making little tweaks. Like, is this, how much of service do you want to be? Just kind of like bringing that whole thing. And so you're doing this deeper dive into the harder topics, which, for lack of a better word, I would just sort of say these the spiritual awareness is developing, and then bringing it into the day-to-day practice is what it helps keep you on that course of service of wanting what, especially during Virgo season. All of this is happening right between the two eclipses, so that's why this is a more important moment in time than usual, because it's really going to put that, if you're talking about your chart as if it were a big ship, it's putting it on a different course. And that's really what's happening here, and it's based on maybe some of those ideals, or what, and then what's the daily practice. So
I think there's a lot there about as the sun moves into Virgo after the South Node has done all this work of realizing that you can be of service without having to work 24 hours a day and
yes.
be perfect. You don't have to be
Yeah.
perfect to be of service.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow,
And then yeah.
what a shocking idea that.
Yeah, and then just also allowing a little more, opening of the Leo in the 12th house, of like this bigger awareness that opens of like, oh, I'm just like one wave in the ocean. I don't have to be the whole damn ocean. I'm just one wave. So there's a liberation in that. So, and then the Aquarius, then a liberation to me is a key word for Aquarius. So there's a liberation into the daily life from that recognition of like, you don't have to be perfect. And, you already know you're doing service oriented work if you've tangled with the South Node well. So,
Yeah.
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 I like it.
I like it.
Cool. Well done, Lori.
I like it. I think
All
it's
right, you ready to move on here?
sure. Let's move on.
Okay, so we are going to take this to Libra rising. So for those of you with Libra rising, we are, bringing the month of August somewhere to a locality near you. um, let's see. So what's going on this month is that the sun has been in Leo for most of the month until August 22nd. So while it's been in Leo, it's been in your 11th house of community. So I would imagine this being not necessarily for everybody, but this being a pretty nice gregarious time of it maybe seeing people you care about out in your community and hopefully maybe going to some weddings or some other community events that feel good and satisfy you socially. So that's kind of the first part. But then um the Leo season will come to a close and the sun will move into Virgo. At which point things are gonna there's a more kind of serious topic getting on here. And it's kind of weird thinking about Virgo in the 12th house. I mean, I guess I would think that it'd be a time of just paying attention to self-judgment, self-criticism, recognizing that you have a whole history before you got wherever you are now. And like who knows what subconscious patterns were formed. And so it's a time of I think going easy on yourself, like really being kinder towards the self is how I would interpret that. And
Mm,
because the South Node has been in Virgo for a while, you've had a chance to work with this and probably hasn't been easy. And hopefully there's been some times if you have been hard on yourself that you're like, oh my God, just give yourself a break.
mhm.
So this is a time to really lean into that. Yes, give yourself a break. Like take a big step back from any sort of self-judgment. And so, right before the sun moves from Leo to Virgo, it's going to be conjunct the South Node, which also means that it's time to kind of look at where is your ego involved in your community group or social circles. Where is that? What's gone on there? Is there something that you just want to stay in that community forever because you don't really want to deal with the 12th house thing because you show up as this like Leo gregarious life of the party type of person? There's other ways to view that, but that's just one idea that's coming to me because at the same moment it's going to oppose the North Node in Aquarius. And this is really an opportunity to move into a wholly new creative direction.
Mm,
I mean, having Aquarius in the fifth house, like that's super innovative. And the fifth house to me is your creative self expression. So it's an extension of yourself. So this is a wonderful time to lean into the part of you that is the most loving, the most creative, and really develop that. And because this North Node has been in Pisces for a while, you've had an opportunity to really develop a sense of compassion and incorporate that into your routine. So it's now time to bring that compassion or maybe mystical enthusiasm into your fifth house as the North Node is in Aquarius. So that's kind of the keynote. We're between two eclipses at this moment. We're showing you this chart, so this is a pivotal moment for all of us. So this isn't just, oh, I'm going to do this today. This is how do you want to work with your creative self-expression, period, for the rest of your life, but for the next year and a half, especially to really develop that. So yeah,
yeah.
hope that made sense.
I think so. I think so. I think, it's really true that when the sun is moving through Leo and you've got Libra rising, it's that just sounds wonderful to me.
Yeah.
You want to gather with your friends, you want to gather with community, you want to have big outdoor bonfires or whatever it is that you do that's big and fun. Um, then, people with Libra rising show up in the world trying to please everybody. And part of that, I think, is so attached to that
Mm,
Virgo in the 12th house. That's
mhm,
got to be a hard place to have Virgo, I would think. Just
mhm,
the internal judgment of your own
mhm.
patterns and unconscious processes that by definition, they're unconscious.
Yeah.
And yet you tend to carry them with a lot of judgment.
Mm,
Oh dear, I'm not plugged in and my battery's about to die. Give me a second
yeah.
here.
No,
Oh,
I
I'm
can.
glad. I'm glad my computer notified me of that. There we
Yeah.
go. We're all good. So yeah, I think that that's kind of a tricky placement. But the sun going into Virgo is really an awesome period of time for you to look at and explore some of those internal processes, your unconscious processes. And because, like you've been talking about, the South Node has been moving through there for a year and a half, you've been really working on letting go of some of that perfectionism that you have in there.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
maybe you've had a good therapist. Maybe you've read some good books that have really gotten you to understand yourself more fully, more deeply, with more kindness. And the sun going in there now, it's like there's been so much work done that now the sun can kind of shine a light and show you how far you've come in the last year and a half. I think there's a real
Mhm.
potential for that. And
Mm.
then with that opposition to the North Node, it's like, okay, bring that understanding into your creativity. Allow it to support the development of this innovative way of showing love in your life, in your
Mm.
world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I,
it's
you know, I
it's
really,
yeah, it's really
yeah.
coming out of the
Mm.
compassion you've developed just
Yeah.
in your day-to-day
Yeah.
life. Oh my gosh, I think of someone, and if you're watching it, you know I'm thinking about you.
I really love that you made the connection between the Virgo and the 12th house, because Libra kind of has that reputation for being indecisive. And if there's a lot of judgment going on in the 12th house, it could really culminate in that sort of indecisive, like, oh, like you said, the people pleasing where you're losing your sense of self. So that really makes a lot of sense. So thanks, Lori. That was a good insight.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the
okay.
rising sign, it's funny when people learn astrology, they learn about the sun, moon, and rising, and the rising is just, the mask you wear. The rising sign sets up everything.
Yes. And it's such
It
a
just sets,
powerful,
yeah, it
it
sets up
represents the
everything.
moment of your birth. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's great.
It sets
Okay,
up
so
how you approach everything. Okay,
yeah.
so on to those of you with Scorpio rising. Let's think about this. We are talking about August 2026, and we start out August. The sun is in Leo, bright, shining right at the top of your chart in some social arena, whether it be your work or just your social reputation. You bring a lot of warmth and generosity and all kinds of awesome stuff to the outer world. And that's where the sun's moving through Leo. So on the 22nd, the sun leaves that area. We all settle down a little. We've been partying. You've been publicly partying, probably while the sun's been in Leo. And now it's time to settle down and get more serious and connect with a larger community that supports you. So that's where the energy moves with the sun going from Leo into Virgo. Now, what we've really are pushing on here is how the sun, just before it enters Virgo, is doing an opposition to the North Node. And that tells us that it is conjunct the South Node because the South Node and the North Node are exactly opposite each other. So the fact that it's conjunct the South Node, it's showing us that we've been in a process. The nodes take about a year and a half. So, over the past year and a half, you've been developing an understanding of the fact that you need to be releasing some sort of high expectation or perfectionism of either your community or how you function within a community. You've been letting go of these high expectations and perfectionism there. And now, as the sun moves into Virgo, it really enables you to show up in that community with a lot more being of service. The greatest thing about Virgo is the being of service part. You can't be of clear service if you're totally judgmental on how you're doing it, right? So you've let
Yeah.
go of a lot of that judgment and you're able to be more clearly of service and kindness within your community. So that's part of it. All of that going on, this, a lot of energy up there in those top parts of the chart. Right before it does that movement, it opposes the North Node, which tells us that we really need to take all of this development and understanding and push it into how we are approaching and working with issues around home, family, our ancestral line. We've been there's been a lot of compassion being developed also over the last year and a half around around your creativity and
Mm,
how you love others, how you show up with love. And
mm,
all of that compassion is shifting into a place of bringing that in a more innovative, intellectual way into your family,
mm,
your home.
mhm,
So, these are longer term processes, but what this has to do with this period in August is it really shines a light on it and it shows you what it is you're getting ready to develop and work on over the next year and a half. The development of innovative home space and releasing the ego in how you show up in the outer world.
mm. Yeah. I think it's striking me about this one is just the idea that Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, all fixed signs, so Scorpio rising is a fixed sign. And the struggle with Scorpio is the ability to let go. And I could see with that intensity with the Scorpio rising that your ego being really attached to your work, like being really like, this is how I make a difference. This is how I make an impact. And part
Oh,
of this work is about dislodging that a bit, just relaxing on that. You are making a difference. You're a Scorpio rising person. You're going to be a catalyst for people. So there's a little bit of relaxing that and relaxing into yeah, the 11th house of community and relaxing into, no, I am doing service. A little bit of an exhale, and that allows you to, maybe having some spaciousness at home supports this process. Maybe you need your own space, a little cabin behind the house or something to give yourself space. Or maybe it's just being totally different as a family, being a totally unusual family. Like,
and if
so.
you're approaching retirement age, pay attention.
Mm, yeah.
In the next year and a half, that period of time with the nodes, the north node in the fourth and the south node going through the 10th, you want to think about that. If you're approaching that, if you're questioning in
Mm,
your mind, should I retire? Should I? Yeah, it's
that's a
probably
good point.
time to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
I work with a
Great.
lot of people that are at that age or
Hmm.
stage of life. So
No,
it's
it's a good point. The people I have in mind for this too. Yeah, it's not that far off. So that's a really good point. I
yeah,
like that. Nice. All right. Shall we?
we shall.
We shall. All right. We're going to move to Sagittarius rising. Okay, so those of you with Sagittarius rising, we're talking about the month of August. And the sun is mostly in Leo for the month of August. So it's been moving through your ninth house, which as a Sagittarius, that's a pretty nice place to have the sun moving through because Sagittarius is a lot about it's about having a good time, but it's also about meaning, and having and philosophy. And the ninth house is about the development of wisdom and kind of leaning into your philosophy and maybe doing some fun travel or maybe reading some really interesting books. So those are all places that are expanding your mind, and that's kind of where the sun is being moving through. Now on August 22nd, it's going to transition to Virgo. But before it does that, it's going to conjunct the south node and oppose the north node, which we have down here in Aquarius. So before it can leave and go into Virgo, it has to kind of look at where you might have some ego attachments to your own philosophy, your own, experiences in life being the one thing that's showing you the way forwards. And it might be time to kind of broaden that, question that, is there a little bit of self-centeredness when it comes to your worldview? Or is it, something more where you just feel really separate from other populaces, so that's a good time to really kind of reflect on that. And then the sun goes into Virgo, as we said, on the 22nd. And when it does that, it's going to start really drawing your attention to work, to your public life, the place where you show up in public. So this is anything to do with your social reputation, which for a lot of people is their profession. But it's just how you engage socially. So it's going to be time to really kind of buckle down and get to work in that 10th house, most public area. That's where you're really being called. And for the last year and a half, you've really been directed to release judgment, perfectionism, that sort of thing with your career and your workspace. So, if you've done that work, you've kind of opened up some new channels to just being able to settle in and know that you're offering service through, this most public place of your chart. And get to work and do it without feeling like you have to work your ass off. You can slow down a little bit. That's kind of what the main topic is, from the sun moving to Leo to Virgo. Now, the opposition to the North Node means that it's time to start becoming more innovative in the way that you communicate, the way you use your voice, the way you get around in your local neighborhood and interact with neighbors and people just in your local environment. That's where this North Node space is opening up. And so for the next year and a half, you're going to be really thinking about, how do you want to use your voice? What's your vision? I mean, I think Aquarius is tied in with your vision too for the future, to some degree. And we're really looking to develop the best parts of Aquarius, the humanitarianism, the ability to really invent, and speak to, I think, more of a collective, well, just more people in general, like the group association of Aquarius. So I think that that's really what you're looking at, is you're kind of showing up in this space at the top of your chart and getting ready to do Virgo things, but underlying, you're really moving into this development of how you use your voice. That's really where the work is. So, yeah.
I like thinking about people with Sagittarius rising. It may not, I don't know. I just think Sagittarius rising has such big opinions.
Yes.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
big opinions with Sagittarius rising, and then with the sun moving through the ninth house, we've got big opinions around our worldview.
Hmm.
And then the south node is moving into that Leo space. It's like, okay, you got to really pay attention, like you said, to where you hold a little bit more ego around your worldview than
Mm,
might be helpful, because uh, you've got Virgo in your 10th house. You want to be
mm.
of service in the outer world. You
Yeah.
can't really be of service if your ego is overblown about your worldview, because that's what you're bringing to
Right.
your social reputation. So, this is a really lovely opportunity for you to look at that. Your worldview, you can really shine that out, but you want to pay attention to how it comes across, and then that opposition between the ninth house and the third is so interesting. It's like, yeah, your worldview and then how you talk about it. So
Yeah.
being able, with the north node going into that third house, and learning to develop a objective way of speaking. You can
Yes.
still bring your worldview into things, but you need to learn to do it with more objectivity and less attachment to yeah,
Yeah.
your own big ideas.
I just keep thinking about for some reason, the Aquarius in the third house on this one is the speaking on behalf of others, speaking on behalf of those who cannot speak. There's something about that, using that innovative your voice in a new way. And the Sagittarius, well, you're fire when you walk in the room. So you know how to get attention. It's
Right.
not, it's not necessarily,
Right.
and then the Leo in the ninth house, those work beautifully together, but you know how to get attention. So there's something here. And then you add the Virgo in about you need to speak up on behalf of others. And that's what the process is. You're
That
trying to
makes
figure
sense.
that out. You're trying to figure out how do you do that in the
Yeah, and
workspace.
that's what that point of that
Yeah.
opposition is, that this is a longer process. And do listen to our nodal video about the shift of the nodes. That'll give you a lot more information. But this really does, it's a moment where you can see clearly what it is you need to set down in order
Yeah.
for the development of a more innovative, objective voice.
Yes. Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Ready?
Yes, we love our
Carry on.
Sagittarius rising people.
We do, and I have a couple in mind, and they're treasures. So, okay, so Capricorn rising.
Okay, so for those of you with Capricorn rising, we are here today talking about August 2026. And we start the month with the sun in Leo. There's a lot going on. I hope you listen to the beginning part of the video where we cover everything. Here, we're going to just touch on a few things that we like to talk about. The month starts with sun in Leo. The sun is moving through your eighth house. And the eighth house is the area of our charts that really represents how we navigate the deepest levels of our relationships.
Mhm.
It's not about just relationship with a capital R. It's where we hit those deep, deep places where we have to navigate somebody else's problems or somebody else's beliefs that are different than our own. That can be sticky area. The eighth
Yeah.
house can be a very difficult area. But for you with Capricorn rising, you come into the world, you're such a serious person. But when it comes to navigating other people's stuff, you really have a lot to give there, a lot
Yeah.
of generosity and warmth. Capricorn rising people make great therapists because of that. Leo in that eighth house, I think. But anyway, that's where the sun is moving for the bulk of the month. That's where your attention is on how you navigate these deep spaces. When the sun moves into Virgo on the 22nd of August, it brings the sun, the light of the sun, the warmth of the sun into your ninth house, which is much more serious. This is where you understand your own worldview.
Mm.
And, so the sun moves in there, we get more serious, go back to school, start studying something, this is a interesting time. And what we're really talking about here is how that sun, right before it moves into Virgo, makes an opposition to the North Node, which tells us it is conjunct the South Node. So we want to think about these as, okay, let's see. Over the past year and a half, with the South Node moving through Virgo, you have learned a lot of where you may hold big ideas, opinions, judgments. You might be really judgmental around other people's worldviews.
Mm.
And yet, over the past year and a half, if you've been doing your work, you've really reduced that. You've really seen how it does not serve you well to be judgmental about other people's uh, worldviews. And you've kind of learned a lot about that. And now, at this point, you are the South Node has moved into Leo, and the story changes. And this opposition point really
Mm.
shows us what's coming up. And what's coming up is a, a need to work on and notice and release how you have some ego attachment to your ability to navigate other people's deep issues. So you've got to
Mm.
bring this reduction in your judgment of other people's worldview to releasing your own ego attachment to your ability to navigate those things. Does that make sense the way I've said that? It's like this little
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah, I think these were paired somehow in this
Yeah,
chart. Eighth,
yeah.
ninth to the eighth. Yep.
Yeah,
They're
it's
related.
really
Yep.
been a preparation. So now, it's not like, oh my gosh, you've got to beat yourself up because you've got too much ego around how it's not that. We all have, an overabundance, where Leo is, we all have a little bit of an ego attachment. We just do. And during this year and a half, you're going to be looking at that and letting it go. And part of the letting it go, or a big part of it, letting it go, is enabling you to develop your own values more. As you let go of your attachment to what other people's values are, you
Mm,
can develop and understand the intellectual side and innovative side of your own values.
hmm
And that's coming after a year and a half of getting more compassionate about how you use your voice.
Yeah.
As you are developing more compassion about how you use your voice, it is now shifting into an ability to bring more innovation and sharp intellectual clarity to your own values.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just thinking, Lord, as you're talking, I mean, we really, wherever we're looking at sort of, especially Leo in the chart, it's very personal, right? We're talking about ourselves. And even if you're not a Leo, your sun rules that Leo in your chart. So no matter what, it's close to our hearts. And Aquarius is about as far away as it gets, right? Like Saturn is as far away from the sun as a visible planet than any of the others. So, and it rules Aquarius. So it's really this lifting out of the self and this sort of this funny reverse message because you're having to really put the space into your own value system and really look at as you innovate your own values, as you recognize that maybe your values have been a little bit stuck and limited in some way, and it's time to the Aquarius North Node moving through there kind of open that up and broaden that out into a bigger vision. And that's the thing that kind of gives you the anchoring to be able to be in this more open space with other people's stuff, this other process you've been involved in. So I really like that. I think that's where you're kind of like, oh, what do I need to open up? Like that spaciousness part of the air sign of
Yeah.
Aquarius. Like, and then just as you said, you spent all this time developing compassion around people in your local neighborhood and your siblings and these, things that are close to you. And now you can fold that into this less personal, into your value system, which is very personal, but this less personal ability to kind of, see what you have to offer other people, which I
Yeah,
said really, really
somehow
well, whatever.
I can think of a couple of different people I know that have that nodal axis in their natal
Yeah.
charts. The
hmm
North Node in the second house. And it is so much about developing your own values,
Yeah.
really understanding your own values and not leaning so heavy on other people's. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I like that.
fascinating. Think about
Yeah. Great. Okay.
moving
Yeah,
on.
ready? Let's move on. So we're going to move on to Aquarius rising. And Aquarius rising. Gosh, there's just been so much happening in Aquarius with Pluto there. And now we're going to have this, they're making this video about this. So, wow, Aquarius people, there's a lot of shifting happening. So, let's talk about this particular period of time. We're talking about the month of August, and the sun has been in Leo for most of August. So, for most of August, the attention has very much been on your one on one partnership space, like whether that's your actual partner or actually people you're teaming up with or how you relate to other people. That's where there's a huge amount of attention. Leo brings in a lot of joy and exuberance. So this is a very illuminated and warm part of your chart. So that's where the sun has been shining. And then it's going to move into Virgo on August 22nd. And that's really where what we're talking about here. Because just before it moves into Virgo and moves away from that exuberance, it runs into the South Node in Leo, which means that it's opposing the North Node in Aquarius. And so, what this is giving you an opportunity to do is really look at really just what ego attachments you have in your relationships. Where does your own sense of self sort of get overblown when you're connecting with other people? And what does that look like? Where is your sense of self when you're, yeah, I mean, when you're connecting with other people. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's what we're looking at, and trying to identify where you know, too firmly attached to what you need and what's happening for you. And you know, what do you need to do about that? You know, and then the sun moves into Virgo. And once the sun moves into Virgo, it really moves into this. I don't know, it's funny because it's a more practical sign, but the eighth house is a place where you're really encountering the more difficult aspects of relationship. You know, those places where you're bumping into other people's values that you didn't even know were there. You're bumping into other people's attitudes about money. You know, you're bumping into all these things that are kind of hidden. And so when the sun moves into that and starts illuminating that, it sort of takes you to this deeper level of relationship. Now, Virgo is a sign, which one of my favorite things about Virgo is the idea that you're trying to be helpful, you're trying to be of service to other people in a very practical way. And so I think that, you know, that's I like that in the eighth house. But I also see the possibility of being very self-judgmental about the way you handle the situation, or maybe being very judgmental of other people's issues. You know, there's something about that. The South Node was in Virgo for a year and a half, giving you a chance to unpack these issues, giving you a chance to unpack, you know, problems you have with other people, you know, and then now it's, you know, hopefully you've really stepped up to that challenge, and it very mostly giving yourself a break and how you handle these issues, you know, how you handle your relationships. And let that sun kind of fly free once it gets into Virgo. Like, just trust yourself, you know, trust yourself that you know how to kind of manage and navigate these difficult areas with other people. So
Mm.
that's kind of that end of the chart. But when you look over here at the North Node, all of this is supporting you making a big innovative change in the way you move through the world. You know, that you have this, you know, open mind and intellectual way of looking at things, and you're very innovative in the way you move through the world. And that's really where you're going to continue to further develop that area of your life. You're going to continue to develop your first house, which really is about you. You know, so it's the education and the relationships that are helping you understand, you know, how you can be this innovative person as you move through your life.
It's
Yeah.
so fascinating. People with Aquarius rising, so intellectually focused, or yeah, that unusual personality that shows up that's very cool. And yet in relationship, there's all this heat and
Mhm.
attachment. Um, I think it's really interesting to think of sometimes people with Aquarius rising are so connected to the connect their identity to the person that's with them.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a big thing, like you said, to be looking at. And this period of time with these shifts of the nodes and the sun, so the sun and the nodes going across each other, it's just so interesting to think of letting go, having worked on releasing those judgments of other people's baggage. And now you're able to actually be of service without that hindrance.
Mhm.
You know, after the
Yes.
22nd, when they've changed spots and you've done the work over the last year and a half of letting go of your judgment on how other people navigate things. And now you can actually be of service. And it is really lovely. Anyone with Aquarius
Mhm.
rising has been through a lot. These past years have been rough
Mhm.
with, all
Yeah.
that stuff in Capricorn through the pandemic and everything in their 12th house and now
Yeah.
all this. And it's really lovely to see the North Node going into that first house for these people because
Mhm.
they can really, it's really a time to let go of their attachment to who they're with. Not like you've got
Yeah.
to kick your partner to the curb, but your identity does not have to depend on how shiny and bright and warm that person beside you is. It's really time for you to develop your own understanding of your unique, innovative, quirky, unusual personality let your freak flag fly, as they used to say. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really a good
totally. I
theme
love
for
it.
people with Aquarius rising right now, I think.
Nice. I love it. That's
Yeah,
great. Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Um, okay. Yeah, that's great.
Hmm.
Ready to move on?
Interest. Yeah, let's move on.
Right. So Pisces rising.
Okay, so for those of you with Pisces rising, we are talking about August 2026. And as we start the month, there's a lot of stuff going on. I hope you listened to the first part of this video. There's a lot of good information there. But for these individual impacts, we're keeping it simple. The sun has been moving through your sixth house as we start the month. Sixth house is your day-to-day routines. With Pisces rising, you've got Leo in that house. We can also think of the sixth house as your lifestyle. It's all the things that make up your lifestyle of how you take care of your body, how you function in these routines of your day to day. So that's where the focus is as we start the month. Yeah, focus there. And then on the 22nd, the sun's going to move into your seventh house. With Pisces rising, you've got Virgo in your seventh house. You really want to have a serious relationship. You probably analyze your relationship a lot. You want to be of service in partnerships. The sun moves in there and brings its attention there. However, there's this sort of weird little thing going on where things are reversing. As the sun is moving into Virgo, the it is conjuncting the south node, opposing the north node. So let me see here. The conjunction to the south node, the sun conjuncting the south node, is really, I feel like it's a point in time where we're able to see clearly what the path for the next year and a half of the nodal shift is setting up for us. We can see where there's some way that we're holding on to our ego. There's some way that it's a little more important than it ought to be, how we're navigating our lifestyle,
Mm,
how we're doing, or, maybe we just are too committed to the fact that we're a vegetarian or we're a whatever, or we meditate 5 times a day. You know, just look at those
mm,
things and understand where you may be more attached to that than is healthy, right?
mm,
So for the next year and a half, you're going to be working on that, releasing your ego there. This is really supported by your releasing your judgment on your relationships over the past year and a half. There's a
mm-hmm.
connection there. You've released a lot of judgment on others, and now you're releasing your attachment. Isn't that funny? If you think about it, you know how much easier it is to release your attachment to your own daily routines if you're not judging other people.
Right.
So that's how
Yeah.
those work together. And this whole process is pointing to the direction, the movement of the North Node into Aquarius, which is your 12th house. This is really supporting and pushing you as you're releasing your ego to your routines of really settling into an intellectual understanding of who you are behind the scenes, your unconscious attitude. This is a time of huge learning about what's under the surface, your
Mm,
psychological patterns, your spiritual awareness over the next year and a half. You're going to be intellectually searching for meaning in that area
yeah.
as you let go of the ego attachment to the day-to-day routines. You can see how those support each other.
Yeah.
And this August is just showing you that path, showing you that pattern.
Yeah. Because, yeah, we are right between the two eclipses. So that's why we're also talking about this, because this is an important pair of weeks right between eclipses that have longer reaching effects than a usual sort of lunation or sun season. So yeah, and I think what's coming to me for this one too is Pisces rising. I mean, that water sign where just so much sensitivity, so much ability to absorb other people's stuff, yet very usefully you have Aquarius in the 12th house. This gives you, in the North Node going to there just is highlighting how can you develop a sense of spaciousness when it comes to these deeper issues? How can you it pairs so well with getting some separation from the Pisces, which can be so merged with everything else. But then having Aquarius here gives you the ability to kind of have more of a vision, about what you want for therapeutic processes. I mean, to me, this speaks of like, yeah, like going away on like a retreat where some of the time you're totally in solitude, but that you're also in community, which is what the Aquarius brings, this idea of being surrounded by, like in a more community type situation. So I think that that's where I'm seeing that can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, for
Yeah.
you to have something like that, to commit to something like that as a way to support what routine changes and relationship shifts you want to see. That would be very nice to support that.
And you've
And that you can, yeah. Well, I was
and
gonna
you've
say
just
it can be wacky. It can be like, what'd you say? Fly your freak fagler. It could be
right.
really, it could be a wacky retreat. It doesn't have to be conventional. So,
Right, right. And it's also it's coming off the North Node moving through Pisces. So you
mhm,
have spent this last year and a half probably really working on developing a new level of understanding and compassion toward yourself.
yeah,
You might have also come through a time of a good deal of suffering. And that's
yeah,
taught you a lot about how to be compassionate to yourself. And now you get to go into that, like, what's behind the surface? What's in my unconscious? How quirky and weird can I be to discover it?
yeah,
There's a real time of discovering.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of a liberation in here,
Yeah.
liberating yourself. With Aquarius is definitely a liberation thing, like from some of those patterns, so that you can relate to people in a less sort of minutia analytical way and be more in your body. I mean, it is an earth sign after all, Virgo. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
cool.
fascinating. Okay.
All
I think
right,
we're
so I
done.
think that brings us to a close. So
Yay.
hey, thank you, Lori.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jenny.
everybody.
We will make another video soon.
We shall. All right, thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.